Hey there, gearheads. Jay Leno here, diving into the fascinating world of electric vehicles, or EVs. These battery-powered machines are the future of transportation. Long before Tesla, electric cars were already turning heads. They were sleek, stylish, and surprisingly fast. Buckle up as we explore the captivating origin story of electric vehicles. The story of the electric car begins in the 19th century, when horses and buggies ruled the roads. The first electric vehicle debuted in the 1830s, thanks to Scottish inventor Robert Anderson. By the late 1800s, electric vehicles started to gain traction. Inventors like William Morrison and Thomas Parker made significant strides in battery technology. By the 20th century, electric cars were all the rage in urban areas. Just when it seemed like electric vehicles were poised to take over, the internal combustion engine entered the arena. Henry Ford's Model T, introduced in 1908, was a game-changer. Gasoline was cheap and plentiful, making the Model T accessible to the masses. Electric cars suffered from limited range and long charging times. The discovery of vast oil reserves in Texas made gasoline even cheaper. Electric cars couldn't compete, and their revolution was put on hold. Gasoline cars stole the spotlight, but the electric dream never fizzled out. Inventors and engineers kept tinkering, convinced electric vehicles had a future. Batteries were bulky and expensive, but these pioneers weren't discouraged. They experimented with new battery chemistries and motor designs. Milk floats and electric delivery vehicles became common sights. Section 2. A battery of challenges, limitations, and triumphs. The dream of a mainstream electric car seemed stuck in neutral. Battery limitations held them back. Lead-acid batteries were heavy and slow to recharge. The 1930s brought nickel-cadmium batteries, lighter and more powerful. But they were expensive and had quirks like the memory effect. The search for a better battery continued. Section 3. Names you should know, the unsung heroes of the electric dream. While the world embraced the V8 engine, a few visionaries kept the electric dream alive. These unsung heroes worked in obscurity with limited resources. Victor Wook developed the first practical hybrid electric vehicle, the Henny Kilowatt. This car combined a small gasoline engine with an electric motor. Gaston Revesz drove his electric car from London to Melbourne. His journey proved electric vehicles could cover long distances. The electric car refuses to die. A perfect storm was brewing that would eventually propel electric vehicles back into the limelight. The 1970s brought an energy crisis, long gas lines, and growing concerns about air pollution. Suddenly, the idea of a clean, efficient electric car didn't seem so far-fetched anymore. Governments began investing in research and development of electric cars. The electric car was back, baby. The stage was set for a new era of electric mobility. Section 1. A slow climb, the oil crisis and the electric whisper. Now, the 1970s oil crisis, it really shook things up. Gas prices soared, folks were lining up for blocks just to fill their tanks. Suddenly, those gas-guzzling behemoths didn't look so appealing anymore. People started to think, hey, maybe there's a better way. And that's when electric cars, they kind of snuck back into the conversation. See, with gas being so pricey, the idea of plugging in your car instead of filling it up, it had a certain appeal. Plus, there was this growing awareness about pollution. Smog choking up our cities. Electric cars, they promised a cleaner, quieter way to get around. But let's be real, those early 70s EVs, they weren't exactly head-turners. They were boxy, underpowered, and their range, well, let's just say you weren't planning any road trips. Plus, those lead-acid batteries, they were still heavy and took forever to charge. Section 2. Brick phones and battery blues, early EVs struggled to compete. Think of it this way, back then, electric cars were kind of like those clunky brick phones of the 80s. Interesting idea, but the technology just wasn't quite there yet. You could make a call, sure, but you wouldn't want to have a long conversation on one of those things. And just like those early cell phones, the batteries in those early EVs, they were the real bottleneck. They were big, heavy, and held about as much charge as a wet sock. You were lucky to squeeze out 50 miles on a good day, and then it was back to the plug for another 8-hour charge. Now, don't get me wrong, some folks, they were really passionate about electric cars. They saw the potential, the dream of a cleaner, more sustainable future. But for most people, the technology just wasn't practical or affordable enough to compete with good old gasoline. Section 3, the California Effect Regulations spark innovation. But here's the thing about California, we've always been a little different, a little ahead of the curve. And in the 1990s, California, we decided to give electric cars a little push, a little nudge in the right direction. See, we were dealing with some nasty smog problems, especially down in Los Angeles. So California, we passed some pretty strict regulations pushing automakers to build cleaner cars. And one of those regulations, it said that automakers, they had to offer a certain number of zero-emission vehicles, or ZEVs. Now, some automakers, they weren't too thrilled about this. They dragged their feet, tried to fight it, but others, they saw it as an opportunity, a chance to innovate, to be at the forefront of something new and exciting. Section 4, hybrids hit the road, a stepping stone to full electrification. And that's when we started to see the first modern hybrids hit the road. Cars like the Toyota Prius, they combined a small gasoline engine with an electric motor. The idea was to get the best of both worlds, the range and convenience of gasoline with the efficiency and lower emissions of electric power. Now hybrids, they weren't perfect. They still relied on gasoline, and some folks argued that they were just a band-aid solution, but you gotta give Toyota credit, they made hybrids mainstream. They showed the world that, hey, you could have a fuel-efficient car that didn't look like a science experiment gone wrong. And more importantly, hybrids, they paved the way for full-fledged electric cars. They got people used to the idea of electric motors, regenerative braking, all that tech that's now standard in EVs. Section 5, the digital revolution enabling technology for the EV boom. But the real game changer, it wasn't just about cars, it was about computers. See, while all this was going on, the digital revolution was in full swing. Silicon Valley, it was exploding with innovation, and all of a sudden we had these powerful tiny computers. We could put them in everything, even cars. And that's when things really started to get interesting for EVs, because now you could use those computers to manage the battery, control the motor, make the whole system way more efficient and sophisticated. Plus, you had all these new lightweight materials like carbon fiber and aluminum, making the cars lighter, which meant they could go farther on a single charge. It was like all the pieces of the puzzle, they were finally starting to fall into place. Section 1. Enter the disruptor Tesla and the rise of the cool EV. Now, up until the early 2000s, electric cars, they were still kind of seen as, well, a bit niche, a bit granola. You know, something for eco-warriors and college professors, not exactly the kind of car to get your heart racing. But then along came Tesla, and they pretty much flipped the script, turned the whole industry on its head. See, Tesla, they weren't afraid to be bold, to be different. They didn't just want to build an electric car, they wanted to build the best car, period. Electric just happened to be part of the package. Their first car, the Tesla Roadster, it was a head-turner, a two-seater sports car that could go from 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds. Suddenly, electric wasn't just about being green, it was about being cool, about having fun. Tesla, they made electric sexy. From 0 to 60 in a blink performance that makes you grin. Electric cars really shine with instant torque and power. No waiting, no gears to shift. Step on the pedal and it's like being shot out of a cannon. Plus, they're incredibly quiet. It's like gliding on air. The real beauty is efficiency. Now, another thing Tesla did brilliantly, they embraced technology, they embraced software. See, those computers I was talking about earlier, they're not just managing the battery and the motor, they're controlling the entire car. Tesla, they treat their cars like giant smartphones on wheels. They're constantly updating the software, adding new features, improving performance. You can even get over-the-air updates, so your car, it actually gets better over time, kind of like your phone. And this software, it's not just about gimmicks, it's about safety too. Tesla's autopilot system, it's one of the most advanced driver assistance systems out there. It can steer, accelerate, and brake automatically, making driving safer and less stressful. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, the one thing that still holds some folks back from going electric charging. See, with a gasoline car, you can fill up your tank in 5 minutes and you're good to go for another 300 miles. Electric cars, well, they're not quite there yet. Charging takes longer and you need to find a charging station. But here's the good news. The charging infrastructure, it's getting better all the time. More and more public charging stations are popping up and the charging times, they're getting faster. Plus, a lot of folks, they can just charge their car at home overnight, kind of like charging your phone. And let's be real, how often do you actually drive more than 200 miles in a day? For most people, range anxiety, it's more of a psychological thing than a real issue. Not your grandpa's electric car, EVs for every taste and budget. And here's the best part. Electric cars, they're not just for the wealthy anymore. Tesla, they might get all the headlines, but pretty much every major automaker, they're now offering electric models. You've got everything from affordable hatchbacks and sedans to luxury SUVs and sports cars. And these new EVs, they're not just good for electric cars, they're just good cars, period. Stylish, practical, and fun to drive. The electric revolution, it's here, folks, and it's only going to get bigger and better. And for a car guy like me, well, that's pretty darn exciting. Battery breakthroughs, the heart of the electric revolution. Now, let's talk about the real unsung hero of the electric car revolution, the battery. See, for years, the battery, it was the Achilles heel of the EV, holding it back from reaching its full potential. But in the 21st century battery technology, it's made some serious leaps and bounds. Remember those clunky, heavy lead-acid batteries from the early days? Well, they're pretty much extinct in EVs now, replaced by these sleek, powerful lithium-ion batteries. Lithium-ion batteries, they're like the Energizer bunnies of the battery world. They pack a lot of energy into a small package, they charge faster, and they last longer. Plus, they don't have that pesky memory effect that plagued earlier battery types. PowerPlay electric motors get smart and efficient. Of course, a battery is no good without a motor to put all that energy to work. And electric motors, they've come a long way too. Early electric motors, they were big, heavy, and not all that efficient. But modern electric motors, they're like little marvels of engineering. They're compact, lightweight, and incredibly efficient, converting almost all of the battery's energy into motion. Plus, they're virtually maintenance-free. No oil changes or spark plug replacements needed. And here's the thing about electric motors. They're inherently simpler than gasoline engines. There are fewer moving parts, which means there's less that can go wrong. That translates to lower maintenance costs and greater reliability over the long haul. Section 3, lightweighting the load, from steel to space-age materials. Now here's another area where electric cars have a leg up on their gas-guzzling cousin's weight. See, gasoline engines, they're heavy beasts, and all that weight, it drags down fuel efficiency. But electric cars, they don't need all that heavy machinery. So car makers are free to use lighter materials like aluminum and even carbon fiber to build their EVs. And lighter cars, well, they go farther on a single charge and handle like a dream. Plus, using these advanced materials, it doesn't just benefit the car's performance, it also makes it safer. Carbon fiber, for example, it's incredibly strong for its weight, so you can build a car that's both lightweight and incredibly safe in a crash. Section 4, regenerative braking, turning stopping power into free miles. Now here's a cool trick that electric cars can do that gasoline cars just can't: regenerative braking. See, When you hit the brakes in a gasoline car, all that kinetic energy, it just gets wasted as heat. But in an electric car, when you hit the brakes, the electric motor, it actually reverses direction and acts as a generator, capturing that kinetic energy and sending it back to the battery. It's like getting free miles just from stopping. Regenerative braking, it's one of those things that makes you scratch your head and say, why didn't we think of this sooner? It's a simple yet elegant solution that makes electric cars even more efficient and fun to drive. The road ahead, navigating the challenges of electrification. Before we get carried away with visions of a Jetsons-like future, let's talk about the challenges. The future of electric vehicles is bright, but the road isn't always smooth. One of the biggest hurdles is cost. Electric cars are still more expensive to build than gasoline cars. Batteries are complex and don't come cheap. The good news is battery costs are steadily coming down. Section 2, range anxiety versus reality, separating fact from fiction. And then there's the whole issue of range. Now, I know what you're thinking, Jay, I don't want to be stuck on the side of the road with a dead battery. And I hear you. Range anxiety, it's a real thing, even if it's often overblown. The truth is, most modern electric cars, they can go well over 200 miles on a single charge. And for everyday driving, commuting to work, running errands, that's more than enough for most people. Plus, like I said, the charging infrastructure, it's getting better all the time. More and more public charging stations are popping up every day. But for those longer road trips, those cross-country adventures, well, that's where things can get a little trickier. Charging an EV, it still takes longer than filling up a gas tank. And finding a fast charging station on a remote highway, it's not always as easy as pulling into a gas station. On Section 3, the future is electric, but it ain't perfect. Addressing the critics. Now, I know some folks, they like to point out the environmental impact of electric cars, especially when it comes to battery production. And it's true, mining the materials for those batteries, it can have environmental consequences. But here's the thing, gasoline cars, they're no picnic for the environment either. Drilling for oil, transporting it, refining it, burning it, all of that, it takes a toll on the planet. And let's not forget about the tailpipe emissions, the smog, the greenhouse gases. The truth is there's no such thing as a perfectly clean car, but electric cars, they represent a significant step in the right direction. And as battery technology continues to improve, as we find more sustainable ways to source those materials, the environmental impact of EVs, it's only going to get better. So there you have it, folks. The story of the electric car, it's a wild ride full of twists and turns, setbacks and triumphs. From those early pioneers tinkering away in their workshops to the sleek, high-tech EVs hitting the streets today. It's been a long and winding road, and you know what? We're still in the early innings of this electric revolution. The technology, it's evolving at lightning speed. Batteries are getting better, cheaper, and more powerful. Charging infrastructure is expanding. And new players are entering the market all the time, bringing fresh ideas and innovations to the table. The way I see it, the electric car, it's not just a fad, it's the future. Now I know, some folks, they're still skeptical. They're hanging on to their gas guzzlers, convinced that the internal combustion engine, it'll never die. And hey, I get it. Change can be scary, but sometimes you gotta embrace the new, gotta take a chance on the future. The beauty of the electric car, it's not just about being green, although that's a big part of it. It's about innovation, about pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Electric cars, they're forcing automakers to rethink everything from the ground up. They're embracing new materials, new manufacturing techniques, new ways of thinking about transportation. And this wave of innovation, it's not just happening in the automotive industry, it's spilling over into other sectors too. Renewable energy, smart grids, autonomous driving, all of these fields, they're being driven forward by the electric car revolution. We're talking about a fundamental shift in how we power our world, how we get around. And for a gearhead like me, well, that's incredibly exciting because it means more than just new cars. It means new possibilities. It means a cleaner, more sustainable future for our kids and grandkids. Now, let's not kid ourselves. The electric car, it's not a magic bullet. It's not going to solve all our problems overnight. We still need to figure out how to generate all that electricity cleanly, how to build a more robust charging infrastructure, how to make EVs accessible to everyone. But I'm optimistic. I've seen firsthand the passion, the ingenuity, the sheer determination of the people working in this field, and I know that together we can overcome these challenges. The future of mobility, it's electric, it's clean, it's quiet, and it's going to be one heck of a ride. So buckle up, folks, and get ready to embrace the electric revolution.